Hello and welcome back to Copic in the Craft Room on YouTube. This is Michelle Houghton here, and today I am going to be coloring a fun image by Stamping Bella in my Copic sketchbook. These are sketchbooks that Imagination International produces with this amazing paper in it from Japan, and we are loving it. So I have tested out some colors over on a separate piece of paper. I decided I want to make my little pig have a little mint chip ice cream on his head. So I'm going to start coloring that up. This is really just for fun. I love coloring, and so this is going in my sketchbook because I love this sweet little image. So I am starting with a BG11 because I want to make that ice cream look like mint chip. It's a favorite of my family's, and so I thought that would be fun. And so I'm starting with my BG11 and then BG15 to add just a little bit of shading. That's the perfect mint color for that ice cream, and smoothing that out with a BG11, kind of adding that dimension with my shading. Y23 is going to be the base color on that little ice cream cone. YR24 is coming in for a little bit of shading, and notice I'm doing some flicks, but then I come in along those lines as well toward the lighter area, and I'm doing the same thing with my YR27 to really reinforce the texture. Very light wash with my Y23 to soften all of that. E93 is going to be the base color for part of the pig. Now, I did a pig image a while back, and I found these fun images of pigs, and one of the ones that I loved and was really fun to color was this one pig that has kind of a brown head and brown bottom and kind of white tummy. And so I decided this little guy is going to be the same kind of pig. So I'm basing him in this E95 because it ends up being kind of this kind of rusty brown earth tone. It's just a really pretty color, and I thought and found a good combination to get it there. The E97 is going to be my first layer of shading, my mid-tone. I'm coming in on all of those areas, trying to make him look a little more three-dimensional, have some depth. So flicking those in from the edges, making him look a little more round, adding that shading. And then E99 is next. So obviously quite a bit darker, going into those deepest shadow areas, underneath, bottoms of his feet, again kind of under his chin. You don't get as much along the top of his head. Those deepest areas more under the kind of almost the shadow of that ice cream. E97 is next. Now this is where I have to start blending back, so I'm working right on the edge where the E99 and E97 meet, and I'm trying to soften that line. So I'm doing some circles, I'm doing some flicks, and pulling that color so that it smooths from one color into the next. And it is shrinking in a little bit. I'm losing a little bit of that lightest color, and that's okay. It's giving me a good base coat to work on top of. E95, that light color comes in last to finish out that blending. I love that his little ear tips kind of stayed that nice light color. And it just really highlights those little ears and the features of his face. W0, I'm going to add a little bit of shading to the white midsection with W0, and then W1 is next. It's pretty much white, and he's a clean little pig except for the ice cream on his head. W3, but I really still want to give him shape, so I have to add some shading. W0 is next. The grays blend so easily together, I can skip that mid-tone. YR00 on his nose, YR00, and I'm going back in and adding a little bit more to his face. It just didn't quite smooth out as much as I wanted it to, and I added a little bit more dark just to really push the dimension on his face. So I've used those E99, E97 again just to darken that up. YR00, I'm going to lighten up some of those edges, and I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. I just felt like the color hadn't gotten dark enough. He was still too pink, and I really wanted him kind of that rusty, earthy color. E97. So really, I'm just jumping back and forth. And this is a great example of how I'm going back over an entire area and working it again. It just wasn't ending up the way I wanted it to. And so I've added more. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure those puddles on the ground end up that mint chip as well. BG15 for that little puddle. I hadn't seen it before really, and so I'm coming back and adding that. Gathering some more markers. Testing some things out. I decided that ice cream might need to be sparkly, and so I'm testing a few things out. And I'm adding, and this is just a glitter pen. This particular one is one that I just have in my stash. It's a Sakura, so it's not a Copic brand pen, but it's just adding those colors. And I was looking for a color for some chocolate chips, of course. So E47 comes to the rescue, and I'm adding some really random, just little dots. I don't necessarily need them to be dots. I'm adding some little teeny tiny ones here at the end with it, but I added some splotches for that those little chocolate chunks. And then I've got a BG with 4 zeros, and I'm going to go through and get the back. Now what I realized pretty fast is that my blotter sheet had quite a bit of color on it. So you saw me kind of flipping the page back and forth. And because it had color on it, and now I'm really saturating the paper with this BG quadruple 0, I needed to actually change the blotter sheet, because if I get it really wet, and here comes the colorless blender getting it even more wet, I can actually pick color up from that blotter sheet underneath and pull it up into my artwork. You can see how that's happened on that left side. E21 is going to base the floor. So just switching it out and putting a fresh piece of paper underneath it has helped that. And I can come back and correct that little spot. And then E27 is going to add some flicks to the texture. It looks like he's almost sitting like on a wood floor maybe. E21 just to really kind of blend over that. I'm not losing the texture, but I definitely want to soften it. Thank you so much for joining me this week on Copic and the Craft Room on YouTube. I had a lot of fun just coloring in my sketchbook. I can always take this image out of that and add it to a card if I want, but for now, it's quite happy just following me around in my sketchbook. Join me again next week for more coloring fun, and if you want to make sure to get all of the notices for our new videos, go ahead and follow us here on YouTube so you can get that in your inbox. Also check us out over on Facebook at Copic in the Craft Room. We have all sorts of inspiration going on all week long. Make sure to ask questions and make comments. I am always listening. Thanks for joining me. Have a happy, colorful week.